I think mediation is amazing because you get to make your own choices. You know your family, you know how your lives are run, you know what works for your children and what doesn't. Rather than a judge making those decisions, you get to make those decisions for your family, and I think that's huge.
We have people say to us, I felt like I was just in the system, I felt like I wasn't going anywhere, I felt like I was just paying out money and not really understanding where was I heading and was I doing the right thing and what else should I have been doing.
I had a guy ring me up this morning. He was a new inquiry. He'd been engaged in this process for a year and had already spent 6 figures. That is crazy on legal fees.
If you go to court and you're disagreeing by, say, £30,000, you might end up spending more than that
100%.
going to court. And I think that's the biggest shock to sort of most people is.
As a family lawyer, I see what happens when communication breaks down, when conversations turn into conflict and conflict turns into court. But not every separation has to follow that path. Today, I'm joined by 2 mediators, Debbie and Erin, people who work with couples at one of the most difficult crossroads in their lives, helping them find resolution without escalating conflict. We're going to talk honestly about what mediation really is, who it works for and who it doesn't, and whether it truly protects people emotionally and financially. Because for many families, the goal isn't to win, it's to move forward with dignity, stability, and as little damage as possible, especially for the children involved. So I want to start with, what is mediation?
So mediation is where 2 parties come together to make a decision about their future, really, and what they're looking to do and how best to get a fair and reasonable agreement between them.
And why would people choose mediation?
I think fundamentally they get to make their own decision. I think that's the important part. People actually sort of tell us that we've got all sorts of options in front of us, but we want to be able to decide. And many times we'll have ex-couples that are quite reasonable, get on quite well, decided that they don't want to continue being together, but are there just to sort out the finances. How are we going to separate it all? How's it going to work? How's it going to work with the children? And how can we move forward without sort of involving more legal side of it at the moment?
So do you find that the people that come to you, it's because they can't agree or because they need a helping hand into how it should be done?
Both, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's probably a little bit of both, really.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's quite difficult when you know, different characters, and sometimes if you've been together, you don't always see another way of interacting with each other. And sometimes when there's a mediator in the room, it kind of gets you to look at it from a slightly different angle, perhaps, and that helps.
Yeah, I think that's so important with mediation. So tell us what happens in the first session of mediation.
Well, initially you'll have 2 separate meetings.
Okay.
So we'll meet with party A and then we'll meet with party B.
Why?
Because we want to get them to open up.
Okay.
We want to get their side of things. We want to get their hopes, what they're looking to achieve, without fear of sort of being able to discuss it in front of someone else.
Okay.
It's purely confidential. It's totally between us, and we sit there and discuss the whole outcome, what they're looking to achieve. And only then, when you've got both aspects, do you come together to joint mediate.
Okay. Are you also using, because that's an intake session, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that what we call it?
Yeah.
Are you also using that to identify if people aren't suitable for mediation?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. There are.
What's your gauge there, and what's the gauge? What are you looking for? How do you know?
We have a number of questions we run through. We look at sort of all aspects of, is there a controlling issue? Is there sort of a power imbalance? Has there been any issue with mental health before? Has there been any issue with drug, alcohol abuse, domestic violence? We cover all of that in an intake meeting. We need to establish first and foremost, are they in a position to mediate? Are they able to mediate? Are they still reeling from the whole breakup? Is it too early? Is it too soon? There's a number of sort of areas that we look at to begin with. And we've had people that it's been really raw. They're saying to you, we want to mediate, but when you actually sit down and discuss it, they're in floods of tears. They're still not quite over it. It's quite difficult. And we sometimes say, I'm not entirely sure that you're ready to mediate, and we know that you're really willing to mediate, but are you ready? And they come back sort of in a few weeks' time and say, you're right, I feel a lot better now. I don't think
Yeah.
I was in the best position
Yeah.
to mediate. And so we have to be honest.
I think sometimes as well, people build up an element of pressure about the whole idea of doing it, you know. And so sometimes when they've had a chat and then they go away and they've had time to rethink on it, and then they say, actually, I am ready now. I realise that, you know, it is quite a nice environment to be in. It's quite relaxed.
Yeah.
And I don't feel under pressure to necessarily have all the answers.
Yeah. I hadn't looked at it from that element. I always thought that you guys would say no to mediation if we had the power imbalance.
Yeah.
Didn't appreciate that you also identify if people just aren't ready yet.
Yeah.
Where people are emotional and we have the tears,
Yeah.
that subsides. What if you get at an intake the anger? Can that subside?
Yeah, many times there's high conflict,
Yeah.
and many times we'll say, you know, we need to look at this, and are you ready to mediate? Is this sort of something that you're able to do? Are you going to be okay, both of you on screen?
Yeah.
Are we best not to have both of you on screen? Are there triggers that you're going to sort of see from each other that's going to not be helpful to the mediation process?
Yeah.
And many times people say, let's shuttle mediate, and sometimes it's just beyond any form of mediation, we think, and they're not going to mediate. One party's just not actually in a position to mediate. There's still so much hurt, anger, that they don't even really want to discuss things. And we have to be realistic. You know, you can't force people to mediate, and you can't force them to sort of work together.
Yeah.
You have to be realistic.
What is shuttle mediation? You mentioned that. Explain to the viewers what that is.
So our online shuttle, obviously, that we do, where you're you know, we tend to do that together, and then obviously we bring in one person, we'll have a chat, we'll kind of understand what they want to get out of the mediation session, whether it be that there's certain pointers that they'd like to cover that day, and then we'll put them in a separate breakout room, bring in the other person, and then also we'll go through the same thing, and then we'll sort of start to mediate between the two. So, you know, this is what so-and-so's idea is, and what do you think of this idea? Do you think it could work? Let's reality test it.
Yeah.
You know, can you meet in the middle there somewhere? And then it kind of just flows from there, really, doesn't it? It's
But they're not on screen, ultimately. They're not on screen together.
Oh, okay.
So they don't get to
Separate.
see each other on screen.
Okay, which is important, I think.
And we shuttle between the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a really good model, I think, to have, because I know when we've had court hearings on the screen, and afterwards, when we finish, my client will say, did you see how he was staring at me? Did you see what she was doing in the background or whatever? And you think, actually, I didn't even notice because I was looking at the judge, but they're sort of eyeballing each other, and it can go unnoticed if the two solicitors are there and the judge is there, because we're sort of doing something else.
Yeah.
So I think having them off the screen can sometimes help.
I think we find as well that if you Google shuttle mediation, a lot of people say, oh, that's for high conflict. And we say, well, not necessarily. And because people think it's a high conflict thing, sometimes people just don't want to engage. They'd rather just, could you help us get somewhere? But we don't really need to sit on the screen together.
Oh, I see.
You know, can you just help us get there? And, you know, we don't see each other that often. We don't speak that often.
Yeah.
Can we shuttle? And they prefer it. And that's totally and completely up to them.
I suppose because I get a lot of people come to me, they've been separated for years, like years and years, and they just don't want to see each other. They just would rather send the paperwork, sign it, and just move on.
Yeah.
So who is mediation brilliant for?
It's brilliant for lots of people, really. I mean, it's brilliant for people that are willing to mediate. It's brilliant if you're open to compromise. It's brilliant if you're happy to sort of work together. It's, you know, it's brilliant for children. It's brilliant for sort of parenting plans, moving forward, separating the finances. I think it covers most people, unless, like we say, there's a reason why not to mediate.
Yeah. I think that what you said there, Deb, is key. You've got to be willing to compromise, haven't you?
Yeah.
And are you sort of establishing that in your intake meetings, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that we kind of say to people, you know, the reality is you're going to have to be prepared to compromise somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
You know, the size of the compromise, we can't tell you. But, you know, if you come into mediation in your mind thinking that you're going to get everything you want, it doesn't work like that, you know. I think most people get that, don't they? They do understand. I mean, you know, and I think sometimes as it goes on, people start to relax a little bit more, and then it's kind of like, well, maybe that isn't the end of the world for me. Maybe I could compromise there in order to get where I need to go and to get that final kind of, signed peace of mind that everything's sorted. So,
who would you say mediation doesn't work for?
I think you do. Lots of people have a preconception of what mediation is about. I've had sort of people say before, "Oh, we thought it was a bit like Judge Judy, and someone would tell us what to do." And sort of I think you have to firstly understand mediation.
Yeah.
And if you understand what it's about, I think you've obviously halfway there.
Yeah.
But if you really absolutely are against, don't want to mediate, and some people want their day in court. They actually want their day in court, and to try and say, would you like to mediate? Wouldn't that be good for you? You don't have someone decide for you, and you can work together, and they really don't want to, and it just wouldn't work. You're not going to change their personality or the way they feel about it. And I think it's sometimes pointless trying to push that. I think they really have to want to mediate.
It's interesting because I always will say to my clients, if we are thinking about making a court application, one of the first things I say to them is, this will not be a win-win.
Yeah.
This won't be a win-lose. This will be a lose-lose. Because if you guys can't agree, the court isn't emotionally involved. The court will simply call it from a very factual standpoint.
Yeah.
Would you say that mediation is a contrast to that? In other words, do people walk out of mediation with a win-win?
I think the trouble is that sort of people get to understand that you've gone from one family pot, if you like, one house you're sharing, and you've got two incomes and everything else, to try and split that.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to be in two houses or two apartments.
It's expensive.
You're trying to, and I suppose the reality kicks in of how we're going to manage that. How's that going to work? How are we going to deal with that?
It's quite, it's quite frightening for them, I suppose, in a lot of ways, because they can't necessarily see how it is going to work.
Yeah.
And so, it can be a bit daunting, I suppose. I mean, I always think it's not necessarily a win-win but ultimately I think mediation is amazing because you get to make your own choices. You know your family. You know how your lives are run.
Yeah.
You know what works for your children and what doesn't. So ultimately, rather than a judge making those decisions, you get to make those decisions for your family. And I think that's huge.
Yeah.
So there might be people watching thinking, well, if the mediator's not going to make the decisions for me, and if I've got to make the decisions myself, and we're all agreed on that, why am I going to mediation then?
Yeah.
What
I
would you
think
say?
it's the guiding. It's we're not here to give you legal advice. We're not legally trained by any stretch of the imagination, and we're not going to give you legal advice. We will give you information.
Yeah.
We may even tell you what we think might be reasonable.
Yeah.
But what's reasonable and fair needs to be where we're heading. So I think sort of, explaining to people how it works a bit more.
Yeah.
Is sort of helpful.
And also saying to people sometimes, what some people like to do and what other people like to. So I suppose it's just expanding the options.
Yeah. And means testing. You means test. How's that going to work? How's that going to sit? How are you going to do that? I think the support side of it is why the mediator's there to help. And I think some people also think that mediators are going to be like rummaging around in the attic of your marriage and who did what and what happened here.
Yeah.
And that's not what the role is. The role is to be impartial. The role is to be there, and how can we handhold you to get somewhere? How can we support you?
Yeah.
And we've seen sort of really difficult cases and really sort of people that you admire and think, wow, I don't know how they've done that. I don't know how they got through that.
Really.
And sort of to help, if we can help them and actually support it, it's sort of a worthwhile thing, I think. It's
Definitely. I mean, I'm a huge fan of mediation, and I think that, we recommend all of our clients, unless they've come to us with an agreement, but all of them that can't agree. And this isn't just, before we go to court, it's a case of, just try mediation, because whilst I can give you the legal position, I can still hear all that emotion.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the difficult part, getting them from the emotional standpoint. And I get it. Your marriage is broken down, your relationship's broken down, you're not seeing your kids as much, you've got to give up the family home that you've lived in for 15 years, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Moving them from that standpoint to that business transaction of, look, we've got 200K in the pot. How are we going to split this up?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course, as a lawyer, you've got your clients back.
Yeah.
So we're always sort of pushing them off to mediation to say you're so close.
Yeah.
Because if we go to court, it's going to be a lose-lose. It really is.
And I think that's where we sound similar, because we're saying, you know, if you go to court and you're disagreeing by, say, £30,000 in the middle of the pot, how about sort of like thinking maybe you split that down the middle?
Yeah.
Because you might end up spending more than that
100%.
going to court. So it is a sort of, again, the expectation really, isn't it?
Yeah. I had a guy ring me up this morning. He was a new inquiry. And he was saying to me, I don't know if I want to stay with my existing solicitors. I don't feel I'm part of the team. And, you know, and I don't really know what's going on. And I want to have a quick chat with you, Trace, and just explain. So I'm like, oh, okay, so where are you? Oh, I don't know. Where are you in the stage of the divorce? I really don't know. Okay, so what's happening with the finances? You know, is that the disagreement or is it children? Well, we went to court once about the finances and, you know, that was a couple of months ago. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's all contested. Did we do any mediation? Nope, didn't do any mediation at all. What really floored me was he'd been engaged in this process for a year and had already spent 6 figures.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, in a year, that is crazy on legal fees. And we were no further forward. In fact, even though I'm a lawyer myself, certain lawyers can push you further apart.
Yeah.
From positions, I mean. You know what I mean? You have your, well, I want this, well, I want that. Some lawyers get involved and we end up here.
Yeah.
Whereas mediation, I think, will try and bring you at least to try facilitate some sort of agreement.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It is. It's sort of how can we get somewhere?
Yeah.
Let's try and work together. We're not particularly sort of mostly happy a lot of the scenarios, but how can we work through it?
Yeah.
How can we get somewhere that separates you financially and lets you move on? You know, let's try and get you to the next stage, really.
Yeah.
And it is difficult. I mean, we often sort of come away and think, wow, you know, these people are dealing with this and dealing with that. And it's sort of, some are on different levels. Some are sort of, someone's moved on and they're very happy and the other person's still reeling.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with all sorts of emotions. I mean, we've had parents say that, you know, we hand over the child and the child's sort of saying, are you going to be okay, Mummy? What are you doing for the weekend? And the child's concerned about them and they say, don't worry, I'm going to sort of meet my friends and I'm going to be doing this and you're going to have a nice time. And they literally sort of pass off the child and then sit there in tears that they've sort of dealt with all this and you've in total admiration that they're dealing with everything.
Doing it, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite incredible, really.
It's
Sometimes the
an
stories.
important part of the children come first, really.
Yeah.
You know, and quite a lot of parents do recognise that. You know, it is kind of, you know, it's a stressful time, but obviously you're trying to make that transition as settled for the kids as you can.
Yeah, 100%. I often think mediation is good if we don't know how many issues we've got. And I'll often say to clients, if you go and have a chat with Debbie, we might identify that we've got 10 issues.
Yeah.
And then Debbie and Erin might be able to solve or help you guys solve 4 of them.
Yeah.
So by the time you come back to me, we're only then arguing about 6. So at least we've narrowed the gap. We've got somewhere.
We've moved it forward.
And then if we can't negotiate on those 6, okay, we're going to court, but at least we're not going with the full 10. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm trying to manage, I suppose, clients' expectations. I don't want them to feel, well, Tracy sent me to mediation, so I've got to come back with the memorandum to go, okay, we've sorted it now, put this into a financial order. It's not that at all. There's no pressure, but just see if you can resolve something.
I think that's the thing as well. The courts want people to mediate and want people to at least attempt mediation, at least try, at least give it a go. And most people do sort of, they jump into it. They are willing to try. They are happy to sort of try, okay, not particularly sure it's going to work or not particularly sure I'm comfortable, but let's move forward. And once you actually get to conversations and they see progress, it's like, okay, let's go with mediation. Let's keep moving.
I think also because it's quite a relaxed thing. I mean, you know, we try and keep it very relaxed for them, and so quite often they look nervous, and then they kind of come in and then they start to chat, and then they're like, oh,
it's not as bad as I thought.
They've said before, haven't they, quite a few times, they've said to us, oh, you know, you're really friendly, and it's really quite nice, you know.
Not like the lawyer.
I don't feel as nervous as I thought I was going to, and you know, and that's always a really good thing, because then you know you're going to get real, true feelings and decisions made.
Yeah,
you know.
I think it's difficult sometimes as well, because we've had sort of clients come from you that say, Tracy's going to do this and Tracy's going to do that and Tracy's amazing and Tracy's great, Tracy's wonderful. And we're like, that's perfect. Should we try and mediate first? That's amazing. But let's see what we can do. So then they're, okay. Tracy said that was a good idea.
How do you deal with well, I want to ask you two questions. You get into mediation, you've been a little bit hoodwinked maybe at the intake. Yes. And all of a sudden you establish that one of the parties is very controlling. And then my second question would be, then you establish that one of the parties is simply just caving and doesn't like confrontation, is just going, yep, okay, let's do that. How do you deal with that?
So we have a real strict policy that we will say to people in mediation, when you're thinking about making this decision, get legal advice. Always get legal advice. Always go back to your solicitor and say, look, what's my best or worst case scenario? So you've got some sort of benchmark that you've already got in your head that I know that that's fair. I know that that's reasonable. And it's almost like you've got that little suit of armour that you understand what's going on and you understand where you are. Yeah. If we feel there's too much of a power imbalance, and we've normally picked that up in the intake, but if we've been hoodwinked or we've missed it somehow, we will say, we will stop. We will stop and say that this isn't actually working out too well. And we can call time on mediation just the same as sort of they can call time if they feel it's not working. But we can say we don't feel this is right.
And have you ever had a situation where you've had to say to the controlling party, enough, we're not doing this anymore?
We've actually had to say, we can see that whoever is uncomfortable, we can see that perhaps they're feeling that this is quite intense and maybe we need to call time on this for the moment. And then we'll actually send out an email that will say, you know, we feel that, you know,
it's not appropriate.
Yeah, the best way forward would be blah, blah, blah. And we try not to be sort of too bossy, if you like, because it's not our place, but we're telling you that we know, we can see, we can realise that this isn't necessarily correct and the right way forward.
Have you ever had any pushback from that?
No.
Oh, really?
No, it's not happened. It's rarely happened. It's probably happened sort of maybe once or twice that we've actually said, you know, this looks really quite... Most of the time it is picked up. It's picked up at the beginning. You can see.
I was going to say, it's always fairly early on, isn't it? And I would say as well, you know, we don't want to waste their time. You know, if it's not going to work and it's really obvious, then it's certainly something we wouldn't hold back in saying.
Yeah.
Have you ever identified, and if you have, how do you deal with it, somebody that is potentially not telling the whole truth? And I'm thinking about when you're trying to sort out finances and someone you just think, I don't know if that's true, actually. They might be lying about their salary or about the amount that they've actually received, or because I know when I represent some clients, and the traditional marriage will be that husband looks after all of that and my domain is the home and the kids. Yeah. And then when I start to explore, okay, well, what's the value of the house? No idea. How much is your mortgage? Wouldn't have a clue. What does your husband earn? No clue about that either. Yeah. And you think, okay, like I've got a very vulnerable client here and I'm going to need to trust that husband gives me everything because I can't even test it with my client because she doesn't know. Yeah. Do you find that in mediation?
Quite often.
Oh, really?
It's
we
quite
do.
Common,
and we always say the importance of the Form E, the importance of having everything disclosed. And we explain to both parties, and specifically if someone doesn't have full knowledge of it, that you're going to get this fully disclosed. And if you don't understand it, you're going to ask the question. If you need more information, you're going to ask the question because you need to be in a position to make an informed decision. Yeah. And you're going to go back to your lawyer and you're going to go back and check and whatever you need to make you comfortable. And we also tend to say to the other person that if you're missing something or you've not disclosed it, or you've forgotten something, that may well come back to bite you at a later stage because that wasn't a full open disclosure.
Yeah.
So it's a bit more sort of let's be realistic, let's be sort of straightforward, and let's try and move forward and sort this, as opposed to trying to cut corners.
Because with us, you can forensically examine the bank statements.
Yeah.
You know, I can, on behalf of my client, go through and go, well, hang on a minute. You know, there's a lot more coming in here than what he put on his Form E. So let me ask some questions about that. Of course, you guys can't do that.
No.
You're just making them give, not making them, you're asking them to give financial disclosure and then they're swapping it.
Yeah.
But you're not looking at any of that, are you?
No, but we're asking, we see it, we do see it because they copy us in.
Sure.
But we're asking them to make sure they're comfortable. Now, that's where the solicitor comes in many times when we're asking them, are you comfortable? If you don't understand it, ask the question, seek legal advice, go back, check, because this is something you're going to be signing to say you're happy with this. So, you know, don't take the chance you didn't quite understand that. Yeah. Let's get that right.
Yeah,
So,
I think equally sometimes there have been scenarios where someone has said, oh, I think there's a pension missing off of there, or I'm sure he or she has this particular account and I can't see it on there. And again, that would be where you would maybe be going back to your solicitor and saying, I believe he has this account, and, you know, trying to find that information out to add it to the Form E. I was like Debbie always says, otherwise they may come back for a second bite at the cherry. Yeah,
it's so true. It's so true.
You know, so
and I think it's a shame when people do that. Yeah. Because then it undermines the mediation. Yeah. You know, if they're trying to hoodwink their ex by saying, oh no, I've given you everything, chapter and verse, and it turns out then that they haven't, you just think, well, that you just kind of wasted everyone's time there, really.
And also we often find that people will come to mediation thinking, I don't need to fill out the Form E, do I? Do I need to do that in mediation?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. But they're so, I didn't think I'd have to do all of that. So I think they think it's a very easy version, and maybe they're not going to be asked too many questions and it's going to be very comfy. Yeah. But, I mean, obviously it needs to be a fair and open disclosure. There's no point in us guessing. You need to be able to sort of make an informed decision. So.
For those that might have just turned off because they don't want to do a Form E, does that apply in every situation, or are there some situations where you think, actually, there are no assets, there's no pension, we don't have to do the Form E? Yeah. So for everyone that's you don't all have to do a Form E. Debbie and Erin won't always give you that homework. No. So just before I move on, because we'll talk about the more about the financials, but I wanted to just clarify, it does work even where you have one party that's slightly more dominant or one party that's slightly more knowledgeable about the finances. Mediation can still work in those scenarios.
It can still work. Yeah. We're conscious that sort of we need to keep an eye on it. We need to make sure that they're both fully informed and fully able to sort of, you know, look at this and make an informed decision. But yeah, it can work.
Yeah. Are you able to share a story where you've had a very dominant and a not so dominant, and how you've navigated that?
We've had a few where sometimes, and it's normally an older couple where he might feel that I did everything. I went to work and I looked after everything and I made everything, and he doesn't quite accept that she had any part in it. Yeah. And it's almost as if, well, I'll give you this. And that should be the end of it, kind of thing. Yeah. And once you actually start to go, hold on a minute, let's just look at the whole, well, I don't see what that's got to do with it, and I don't see what that's got to do. Yeah. But that's sort of an older generation thing, I think, sometimes, and almost a perception that that's how it should be. Yeah. But once you start to sort of run through everything, it's a bit of a shock to the system. Yeah. But they do understand, well, we're going to start here and try and work together. Oh, okay.
And I think that's the beauty of mediation, because you can reframe instantly. You know, it's not just about the financial contribution. We're looking at all the contributions. And while she was over here making you dinner and raising the kids, that was a valuable contribution. Yeah. Whereas it can be frustrating sometimes as a lawyer, because you put all that in a letter and you send it out to your opponent, and then you come back with the justification as to why it should all just be a financial contribution because I worked all those years. Whereas in mediation, it's almost an instant repair of that old-fashioned way of thinking.
Yeah. We had one say, isn't it isn't there an option where it's a business that we've built that's considered a genius business or something that was very expensive? And I'm thinking, so if I'm lost here, but didn't some of these big people like Amazon, they don't pay their wife as much, or, you know, this hasn't happened. And we sort of think, well, I don't know where they're getting these stories from. How is this all sort of going to relate to where we're going? But yeah, I don't know. It's sort of bringing them back down to earth a little bit with let's start with where we're going.
I think Mrs. Bezos #1 would disagree with that. She
I
done
think
very
she
well.
would. She did.
She built it with him, though, to be fair, I think. So you've mentioned a few times that, you know, during mediation, you may give advice or you may give suggestions that they go and take legal advice.
Yes.
So let's explore then, because I will always say mediation's far cheaper because you both get one bill. You know, you're not having your solicitor's bill and you're not having your solicitor's bill.
Yeah.
Is it cheaper then to do mediation if we're still seeing the lawyers anyway?
Yes, because you're not seeing the lawyers as much.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a case of, you know, one lawyer's writing a letter, the other lawyer's writing back, another one's writing back, and you're sort of negotiating between the two. It's purely screen time.
Yeah.
So it's screen time and documents that we will charge for. We don't charge to send an email, or we don't charge to be on the phone. It's just when we're on screen and when we're forming the final documents for them. So yes, it does. You know, when we've heard people say they've spent 30, 40, 50 up and up in the courts and the court process and going through everything, it's on average way less than sort of £4,000 or £5,000 total with everything over a process of sort of how many sessions and working together. It can, and then obviously you're splitting that as well. So it's, you know, 2.5 each or 2 each or however it works.
And I've got to go back to what you guys said earlier. It's so much more empowering because you are in control of it.
Yeah.
You know, the minute we get into the court system, we are waiting 3 to 4 months for the next court hearing.
Yeah.
So we're in a stagnant position. Lawyers try to negotiate. It sometimes makes it worse. It sometimes makes it better. But generally, if we're in the court system, a lot of people will be like, no, I'm going to wait until we get to court. I'm not going to talk to them now for another 3. And you think, 3 to 4 months, like we could do so much in that time.
Well, we get that sometimes because we've said to people, look, you know, if mediation didn't sort of be an option for you at the moment and you are heading down the court route and you've got a date and it's 4 months down the line, if you do decide you want to mediate in between, keep the court date, wait for the court date, come back, and let's see if we can help you. Let's see if we can get there before the court date. You can always cancel it. You can always postpone it. But at least you're attempting something in the meantime. And what have you got to lose, really?
I think what can sometimes happen with us as well is that everyone's sort of geared up for court. You know, and it's almost this expectation that when they get there, judge will say, right, you're going to get this and you're going to get this. In reality, that doesn't happen. Judge wants to see all the evidence. He's going to use the case law and he's going to apply the facts to this evidence and divvy it up. That takes 3 hearings if we do a financial case. So at hearing number 1 and number 2, there's no order made unless the parties come to an agreement, and then the judge will make the order. If they haven't agreed, then at hearing number 3, judge will make the order. What we're finding is that after hearing 1, or maybe after hearing 2, because the parties are thinking, well, we're not getting very far with this judge. He's not giving up. This is costing me a fortune. Actually, should we just try mediation? Or the judges who are swamped with cases right now in the family court system are saying, have you guys tried mediation yet? Why don't you? You've literally got 2 things that you're not in agreement about. Go and, you know, do you find that you get people that are already in the system?
Yeah, already in the system or already spent a whole load of money and got sort of like not very far and they're deciding, let's go back, let's just see if we can work this through. I think it maybe puts a little bit of a different perspective on it when you've spent that amount of money and it's the family pot that you're spending.
100%.
You're not dividing that money. You've now spent that obviously trying to get somewhere and can we mediate?
I think, like you say, their expectations are sometimes when they go to court that immediately they're going to get the answer and they're going to get the, you know, and it's all going to be. And then when the reality maybe sets in that that's not going to be the case, then the mediation does become a bit more desirable in terms of being able to just kind of sort it quite quickly.
It's a good point. The reference that I made earlier to the new inquiry, they had spent, that was 25% of the whole pot.
Wow,
already. And, you know, they were 10% into the process. We were nowhere near the finish line.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I just think, oh my goodness me. And all that's happening is we're now getting frustrated because he spent this much and she spent this much and his lawyer hates my lawyer. And then I really felt for the person I spoke to because he wasn't actually criticising the other side. He was criticising his own team and going, I don't really feel one part of it. Like they're kind of telling me what to do and I'm writing the checks. But what got me more, and this infuriates me, because I get so many DMs and emails and messages off people, and they'll say, I've got a solicitor, but can I ask you this question? And my standard answer, and for those of you that have had this answer, you'll know what I'm talking about, I will always say, go back and speak to your solicitor.
Yeah.
A, because they know more about your case than I do, but more importantly, you're paying them for this advice. They should have given you that advice. The amount of people that come to me and go, I just don't understand what's going on. Yeah. I'm paying these bills and I really don't understand. And I think, on what level have we not sat our client down and gone, okay, this is the process, this is what it means, this is what it's going to cost most likely. Are you up for it? Because I think starting the court process, whether it's finances or children, is as expensive mentally as it is financially. I've seen people on their knees, and our role, you know, my role, Catherine's role, the solicitors here, can fall into propping them up. Come on, we're nearly at the finish line. You can do this. Ignore what the other side is saying. And it's so mentally draining for them.
We actually hear the other side of that, because we have people say to us, I felt like I was just in the system. I felt like I wasn't going anywhere. I felt like I was just paying out money and not really understanding sort of where was I heading and was I doing the right thing and what else should I have been doing?
Yeah.
And now we're with Tracy or with Catherine, and I feel like we're actually getting somewhere.
Yeah.
So even though they're mediating, they're sort of saying, I feel like I've spent a lot of money to get nowhere so far.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. And I think that lawyers shouldn't be afraid to hand their cases over to mediation.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if 10 clients come through your door and 8 of them go to mediation and resolve, so our work has now reduced because rather than going to court for a year, we're doing a financial order, it's not a problem because you just take in 8 more. Yeah. And 8 more. It's not as if you think, oh, well, I've lost out on them. Well, you haven't really, because you've got room now, because now we're just doing a financial order. And isn't it better, you know, on a bit of a cheesy note, but isn't it better to have happy people rather than people that are just emotionally drained? Honestly, it's awful, you know, because we don't get emotionally involved. So it's very easy for us to be super factual. But you have to have some sort of sensitivity to be able to recognise. I can't say to a client, just move on, get on with it, it's fine, we'll deal with it.
You'll be fine, yeah.
Because they're like, well, I'm just about to lose the house, Trace, you know. Yeah. They'll come back and they'll say, so I've spoken to a financial advisor, they've told me my mortgage raising capacity and I can't afford to buy him out, or I can't afford to buy her out. And I'm thinking, I'm so sorry. Yeah. And the house was my grandmother's, and it's, you know, and you think, oh my God, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Whereas
hard.
at mediation, I think if we could collaborate more, the professions at mediation, you could potentially say to the other side, well, what about something else? What about you keep more of the pension, let her keep the house? Do you know what I mean?
And we say that
happens
sometimes, often. I mean, we say you can collaborate, collaborative law, collaborative mediation. You'll have your lawyer, your mediators, and work together. We say, you know, that's an option for you. Obviously, it is a little bit more expensive because you've got sort of, you're paying both ways. But we're always saying it's almost like a bit of a trade-off because in some instances you might say, I don't want to touch the pension, but I'd like more of the equity, or I don't want to, you know, touch sort of the savings, but I'd like more of the house, et cetera, et cetera. It's all sort of trading off and getting to a place where you're comfortable, as long as it's obviously fair and reasonable.
Explain that collaborative, Deb, for those that don't know what that is.
So we will have the mediators and the respective lawyers.
A mediator each for both parties, or one mediator? One mediator, yeah.
Or there might be 2 of us in the room, but we'll be sort of co-mediating. But we're not separate. We're obviously on the same team. Yeah. And then the lawyers, and we're mediating, and then they're literally talking to the lawyers and coming back and working together, and sort of we'll explain, we're at this point now and we now need to look at this area and this area. And it's almost like having that backup, but you're not quite sort of positional because they're obviously, they have their best interests at heart. You have your client's best interests at heart, but they're almost seeing this running live. And how can we get to sort of making a resolution?
Do you think it works for the better, or do you think sometimes having the lawyers there can be worse? What's your overall experience of collaborative law?
Mostly, people will avoid it. Mostly people don't do it, which we'd like more people to do it. I know it's quite difficult, but mostly people say, oh, no, I can't afford it, or it's too difficult, it's too expensive. But I think it does work. I think it works sometimes better because you're not having to go away and ask the question. Your lawyer's right there. They're with you.
You do it in the moment.
You're doing it there. And I think it's a bit American in a way, because in America they tend to do a 7-hour stint of mediation, and the lawyers are there and everyone's there and we've wrapped up and we're done and we're finished. Whereas we'll go week 1 and week 2 and then we'll come back and we'll come back. So I think sort of it's heading that way. Yeah. It seems to be heading more that way.
And I think more power to it, simply because the family court is so stretched, super stretched. You know, we have issues every day here at the firm, as do other law firms, where we're all ready for a case. We've got the barrister prepped, we've done the bundle, we've incurred sometimes a couple of £1,000 worth of work because we've spent a week preparing client for court. The barrister is then saying, well, court's tomorrow, so my brief fee is now incurred. There's no getting out of that. And at 3 o'clock, the court call and go, really sorry, we've got no judge for tomorrow. All of those costs lost. Yeah. You can salvage some because you are ready for the next hearing, but the next hearing might be a year away. Yeah. And you think, oh my God, it's incredibly long now, especially for final hearings. We are waiting over a year. If you want anything more than a full day in court, and court determines that you might need a day and a half for your final hearing, it will be a year away, particularly in the southern courts, the city courts, you know. Yeah. So I think more collaborative law, more mediators being involved, I think can only be a good thing. What worries me sometimes when the lawyers get involved is that I suppose you want to make sure that your lawyer is on board with the collaborative approach.
That's the thing, yeah.
Because you don't want to be going back to your room, your virtual room, and having your lawyer go, no, we're not taking a penny less. Because that doesn't really help.
Don't agree with any of that. Scrub that you've just gone all through. You've all worked through for the past 2 hours. We're going back to here. Yeah. No, that wouldn't work. I think that you know, it's known that collaborative law is collaborative. Yeah. We are collaborating and working together. So, that's the plan.
Has that ever happened where you've got your parties to an agreement, you do your memorandum, you send them off to their lawyers, or one of them lawyers, to get and the lawyer goes, oh, no, the judge isn't going to like that at all, and it all comes back to you? Have you ever had that?
We had one where it went off to the lawyers and the lawyer was actually saying, that's fine, that's great. But then the other party spoke to their lawyer. Instead of the one lawyer signing it off, the other lawyer then became a bit more positional, and I don't think that's a good idea. And it kind of unravelled. Oh. So it was sort of, we were there. We were right there kind of thing. It was agreed, it was fair, it was reasonable, but it sort of come undone.
It's kind of a matter of opinion, really, in the end, wasn't it? Rather than so...
And do they then come back to you as the mediator, or is your sort of job done?
It depends. I mean, we've had them come back, and we've had it sort of where they've walked away and sort of been very disheartened because we've been through the whole mediation process, and now my lawyer said this or my lawyer said that, and it came unglued. So, but that's a rare case, really. Yeah. Mostly people go away. We've drawn everything up. They've agreed it. They've signed it. We've signed it, and it goes off to one lawyer because you're no longer sort of arguing about it, and that one lawyer takes it forward to the courts. Rarely, but it has happened.
That must be soul destroying, especially for the parties.
It is as well. I mean, they've worked sort of six sessions mostly, most times 6 sessions together, explored everything, tested everything. Yeah. How's this going to work? They've gone off and sort of found, I mean, in this case, could my parents support me, and would they buy into the mortgage? And everything was organised, everything was fun, and everything was done. And then it kind of came unglued.
Such a shame. Do you find there is a more common financial disagreement that presents itself? Is the one that stands out and you think, oh, here we go, it's about the house or the pension?
Usually
I
the
suppose
house.
the house.
Yeah.
Is
the
it?
house
Yeah.
is
It's usually the
probably
house.
always
And
paramount.
what's the disagreement? That they don't want to sell it, or
Yeah.
they do want to sell it?
Yeah.
Mostly. There's a sort of obviously a great attachment to the house, whether it's the children should be remaining there or we feel we've had this for a long time and this is our home, or it's the most difficult one to sometimes explore. And sometimes it's a case of there might be no children involved and you're looking at sort of a house and it's got to be sold, and one's very set that, well, I like it there, I've always lived there, that's my home.
Yeah.
And the other one's very, well, I don't want to live there and I'd like to sell it, and it could be quite a conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's normally the house.
And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? Because you are now trying to get them to apply a little bit of common sense and fairness and reasonableness, but you've got the emotion there.
It's usually one coming off of the mortgage, isn't it? It's usually how does the other person move forward?
Okay.
Reality
How do
testing,
they-
can they buy them out? What are the options really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, it may be that they need to explore a slightly different option that they hadn't thought of before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that is the general biggest.
Yeah, that's normally the
hurdle, isn't
biggest stumbling.
Yeah.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because the court's view is that both parties' housing needs need to be met.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the litmus test. If that means that one person gets to stay in the former matrimonial home until the youngest is 18 and the other person rents, then we've met the test, technically. But then there's the element of fairness that comes into it. And it can be difficult. If I'm acting for the vulnerable party, I'm giving the option of we can stay where we are until the children are 18. If I'm acting for the other party, it's sort of like, well, you may have to wait until the youngest is 18, but actually, your trade-off is that you'll get more of the equity at that point. But it's hard, isn't it? Because they walk away thinking, why am I renting a two-bedroom flat again?
Yeah, I suppose the
They're in
current
the house.
situation they're in, And also I think sometimes we get a few where, it needs to be separated so they've got enough money to actually afford rent as well, because where all the income had been going into the one family income and paying for most things and then suddenly they're having to now rent somewhere, which is very expensive, renting. It means that they're not going to be able to pay for as much within the family as they were before. And that can also set a little bit of a divide with people.
Definitely causes friction. You've got where neither one of them can buy the other party out. So we're all agreed that the house must be sold, but actually the more vulnerable who's on benefits is now going to get a lump sum of 80k. We don't want it because that's going to mess up my benefits completely. Then I'm going to lose my benefits. I don't really want to take this equity and just flitter it away on rent and but I'm going to have to because I'm going to lose my benefits. It can be
Day-to-day
such
living,
a tricky. I think what your summary, Erin, of just got to reality test it all. We've got to try and strike that fairness as well as making sure that we're not just throwing good money after bad.
Yeah.
But it's so hard carving up one household's income and making it stretch into two.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
and that's
near
the
on
compromise,
impossible.
isn't it? Every time that's the compromise. And I think that's the biggest shock to sort of most people is, I get it. We're now going to have to take where we were all sort of working towards this one area, we're going to have to try and work towards two areas, two separate sort of pots and try and function and look after, in most cases, children and where they're going to stay. And I need sort of 2 bedrooms because I need a bedroom for the children, and I need 2 bedrooms because I need a bedroom for the child. And it's all sort of, how are we going to manage that? How when we look at the means testing, is that affordable? How is that going to work?
The consequences of that breakdown, or the ramifications of it, are quite... It's that ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because then I will say to what I always call the vulnerable party, well, I know you didn't work during the marriage, but he can't support you forever, and therefore you're going to have to look for some sort of part-time work.
Yeah.
So we're giving up the house, we're downsizing, and now we're working part-time and trying to get the kids to school and pick them up. And oh my goodness, the whole world's just been turned upside down. Managing that It's just as important, I think, as giving the legal advice or trying to facilitate the agreement. Just managing their emotional, it's just all imploded, hasn't it? And you're trying to balance that up against.
It's an upheaval for them, isn't it? I mean, it's a real change in lifestyle that they may not have been expecting to happen. So, you can't underestimate how difficult that is for people. And sometimes we do say to people, they get upset, and it's like, it's okay. It's okay to get upset, but the main thing is we want to try and use this time to get forward and be future focused and decide where you can go, and how you can make it work.
I ran a case years ago, and I was for the wife, and she was 20 years older than her husband, and she had reached retirement age, and he decided that actually he wanted a divorce and he was leaving. And then it transpired that there was another person involved who was significantly younger than my client. And I've always remembered that case because she really struggled, not with the advice, not with the process, but she couldn't quite get her head around. It was a long relationship. It was almost 30 years, but she couldn't quite get her head around the fact that it had all just gone. And here she was in retirement age thinking, well, what do I do now? Yeah, and he was busily creating a new life for himself.
We had that. We had sort of he'd moved on. He was very happy. He's talking about where he's going on his holiday, what's happening. And she kind of said, well, I felt like the channel had been changed. I felt like I was in this TV program and all of a sudden I was in this one. And I'm like, no, I was actually in this program. I don't belong in this one. Yeah. And she said trying to come to terms with sort of how much had changed was almost sort of, how do I get over that first before I even start to work, how I'm going to get over everything else and manage everything else and where do I go from here? Yeah. It was, we say often that I can't imagine what they go through and how they manage it, but sort of people are very resilient and you see them come through the other side and think, wow, that was just incredible. You're in awe of how they dealt with it. But yeah.
It's so true. So let's move on to children and mediation. First of all, are children involved in mediation?
You can have children involved in mediation. Okay. And they're sort of dealt with by a child mediator. So someone that's specifically trained separately, not in the group of mediation, not sitting there in there with us. Yeah. And they chat to a child, basically over a certain age, normally over 10, and say, what are your wishes? It's not about you need to decide anything. Okay. It's not about what do you think's best. We're not sort of looking to discuss, mum and dad and what's happened here. Yes. It's just, have you got any wishes? Have you got anything that you'd like sort of to pass on to mum and dad? That we know they're discussing things. It's not your responsibility, but anything that you'd like to sort of discuss really and what your wishes might be. Some children adapt to that very well and they do have a number of sort of wishes that they'd like to stay here or they'd like to do that or they prefer this or prefer that, but that's done by a separate mediator and someone that's trained in child mediation.
I know the courts are in favour of referring families off to child mediation. Yeah. And I do think it's less adversarial, it's quicker. So we can look to get a result fairly quickly. Yeah. What would you say is the most common dispute around children that you see?
Where they're going to spend their time, where they're going to be, where they're going to live, and how they're going to spend their time. And I think that, like I said earlier, most people they obviously realise that the best interest of the child is to have both parents, as long as it's safe to do so, and as long as everything's fine. We often have people say he was a lousy husband, but he's a great dad. Yeah. He's a fantastic dad, and I don't want that to be taken away from the children. Or we'll have that, we kind of outgrew our marriage and, as a wife, it wasn't all sort of fun and games anymore. It was quite sort of difficult. But she's a great mum. Yeah. So it's nice that sort of they recognise that and that's kept separate. What's happening to us sort of as a ex-couple isn't about what's happening to us as joint parents and how we're going to navigate that, because it's not sort of a short term. We're in this for the long term. Yeah. We're going to see children graduate or get engaged or have children of their own. And, it's not nice if it's sort of mum can visit now and dad'll have to come later.
Yeah.
It's sort of about being together in the long term, really.
I get that a lot, and I will make suggestions on the DMs and the emails. This isn't a legal issue. This is a co-parenting issue.
Yeah.
Like, let them go on holiday. Just, well, they want to go on holiday and I'm not going to give my permission. But why?
Yeah.
Well, because I didn't have Christmas time with them.
Yeah.
Get over it. Like, we've got to move past it. One of you is going to have to back down first.
Yeah.
And that's not legal advice. That's just co-parenting. We're going to have to.
I think also it's about thinking about what's best for the children in terms of, well, what would they enjoy? I'm sure the children would love another holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it that parents they're always constantly maybe trying to think about, 50-50 and I've had, so-and-so's had this week, so I should get that. But it's sort of easy to forget what works best for the children.
Yeah.
What would they enjoy? What would they like? How would it work best for them? I think that's the most important part, and sometimes that gets lost a little bit in translation, doesn't it?
Does, yeah. I've had people come to me with spreadsheets. Well, I had 52 nights in 2024 and then I had 68 nights in 2025. So I want that percentage increase to continue, which will get me to 83 and then we're going to be on shared care and they don't have to pay child maintenance and and I find that, hang on a minute, are we using the children as leverage here or are we actually thinking what's in the best interest of the children? Do you see people using children as leverage?
Yeah, we've had I remember saying to one client, I'm sure you didn't mean that in that way.
Do you? Yeah.
I'm sure you didn't mean that sort of you were seeming to correlate the finances with the children. Obviously, they're very separate. Yes, they are very separate. But it was almost they were going down the road of, well, if I have this, you can see more of the child. And it's not about obviously that. And just a little tiny. I'm sure you didn't mean that, but yeah,
quick adjustment.
Yeah.
Do you ever get situations where we're not just talking about the 50-50 shared care or the alternate weekends, where we get a parent that, well, I want to move away. I want to move far away and I'm taking the children with me and that's not even up for debate. And I'm talking, could be from England to Scotland or overseas. And how do you deal with that?
We've had them already separate and living in separate countries and sort of managing that and how that works and sort of schools and international schools and how that's going to go. And it's, we sit there sometimes thinking, how are we going to manage this one? How is that going to actually work? But people will do what they feel is important for the child many times. And in this case, it was important for the child. They were following a parent who had quite a sort of a high-profile lifestyle and did have to be in sort of several countries. And I think that was a kind of an understanding that, it was good for the child.
Okay.
So it worked. It did work. But I know that many times people will be arguing over who takes who on holiday, like you say.
Yeah.
And, I don't think they should be out for more than 5 days. They're too young to be away for more than 3 days. Or if they go away for 3 days, then I think they should have 2 days when they come back. And it all gets very involved. And you sort of, like our parenting plans, sometimes our parenting plans is quite basic and it will get very, very strict and too many restraints and it's almost waiting to sort of
work. It just this is where you can't have the parenting plan or even the child arrangements order, if we go one step further, as your crutch. It's a reference guide,
exactly,
but ultimately you guys have got to co-parent. You've got to be flexible.
That's it. I was just about to say, I think in the parenting plans quite often we say, when we put in there's an amount of flexibility within this that, if something needs to be changed, because I think sometimes the other party can get really upset if it isn't followed to the T sometimes. And so in order, we say, look, there does need to be an element of flexibility in here that if for some reason something happens and you need to change that, the other party needs to accept that it's not happening every 5 minutes. It's not something you're doing every week, but there may be a period where you'll say, okay, if we can give each other notice within this time, we accept that there will be times where we'll need to be flexible. I think most people understand that, don't they?
We have sort of people say, I'd like to specify that the passport's held here and it's picked up on this day and dropped off, and we say that you are going to have to work together. You're going to have to be joint parents. You are going to have to say, I'll get the passport and I'll drop it back to you, or I've held it, or it's not, that important. There isn't a flight risk or something going on behind here. We don't have to be as stringent as maybe you think the parenting plan needs to be. It's more about working together. You're still the joint parents.
How hard is it? And I think this is where I really struggled with the mediation side of things, being a mediator.
Yeah.
How hard is it not to tell people, now, come on, for goodness sake, just sort yourselves out. How hard is it to keep your opinion to yourself and just help them navigate? And you're looking at this thinking, oh, my goodness me, if he'd just do that, if she'd just do that, how hard is that?
I think it's a mindset, isn't it? You kind of get used to not having an opinion.
You get used to not giving the advice. You get used to the
Okay.
fact that you're not, it's not your decision, it's their decision. I think sometimes people will come to us and say, well, I went to this mediator and they started telling us this. And I think, oh, did they? Start telling you things. It's sort of like you can't force your version on. It's their decisions.
But do you struggle with that when you see such a ridiculous kind of arguing over nothing scenario happening in front of you?
I think there are times where we may say to them, look, you seem like a really good mum, you seem like a really good dad, you both seem like really good parents. There's just something here that you're stumbling upon, and almost really it's a shame, and it would be nice if you...
That's a
and
really good way to
sometimes
frame it.
it's the reality of it, and they maybe say to themselves, okay, if they've always, quite often when we do see people separately and they're quite they complement each other, they say she's a really good mum, and when we tell them that, quite often it almost softens the whole thing, and they think, oh, okay, like they're not in their meeting saying terrible things about me, and so occasionally, you can say to people, look, you're so close, if you just, and then they, oh, okay, well, maybe we could do this or that, or, so again, it's not our idea, but it's like, it's kind of saying to them, it's all there. You just need to find it. And people like making their own decisions.
Yeah, they do.
So
absolutely,
they don't
especially
always want to be
children.
told, so, yeah.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about mediation?
I think that we will decide. I think sometimes people think you're going to be really like, well, you need to do this or you need to do that, or it's best if you do this. I think the misconception of, or that it's just too wishy-washy and not going to work. I think that's the two biggies that we get, or that we're going to be quite stern and sort of quite strict on what's happening. I think that they don't necessarily imagine that it can be a friendly process. It can be quite relaxed, and it's a support as well as a guiding or helping you to make that decision.
For those people that we get that don't want to do it, it would be your second reason there, Deb. They'd be like, no, I'm not going to mediate. They do that because I need to be told exactly. Yeah. Well, more so, they need to be told exactly. You need to get a letter together, Trace, and tell them exactly how it's going to be. Yeah. And that's why mediation's not going to work for us.
And we hear that. We do hear, we have the, well, if this doesn't work, Tracy's going to sort it. Or it's going to be fine, don't worry. It's going to be fine. Yeah. So there is that backup. I'm fine. I've got a sort of Tracy in the background.
Yeah.
So, we do hear that. But, yeah.
And I suppose that comes full circle back to your intake meeting, where you are identifying right from the offset if mediation is going to work. Yeah. And I think that's really important to spell out, because there will be people watching this thinking, I really can't afford a lawyer. I cannot do this on my own. I'm terrified of court, so I'm just stuck. I've got nothing else to do. And actually, no, pick up the phone, find a mediator. I'm always saying to people, you can get one local if you're up for the whole face-to-face thing, or you can go nationwide if you want to do the Teams call. Like, it really doesn't matter, but they will help you facilitate the agreement. You've mentioned the relationship between mediators and lawyers. Do you like people to have taken legal advice before mediation, or do you rather they take it in the middle of the process, or do you not have a preference?
We get both, really, don't we?
It tends to be a mixture,
it's
really.
a mixture.
I mean, we always advise people to take advice during mediation sessions.
Yeah.
Particularly when they're coming to joint mediation and potentially coming to some forms of agreement, then we would always, and quite often we do get people that haven't had legal advice yet.
Yeah.
And we say to them, you do need to do that.
Well, we had people that say, I don't need a lawyer. I don't need one. I'm fine. I will make my own decision. And we say, okay, you don't need one, but have one anyway.
Yeah.
Have one there just to give you that's sort of a fair and reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. But so I think sometimes they think that, not having a lawyer and doing mediation, they're making their own decisions. But we say that's the safety net. That's having the legal advice that you need.
Do you find it's helpful if they've spoken to a lawyer before getting into mediation? And do you notice
Not
the ones
always.
that have? Not always.
Not always.
Okay, that's interesting.
Not always, because we always say, obviously, your lawyer's on your side.
Yeah.
And they're ultimately positional, and they're there to look after you.
Yeah.
And they're there to take care of your best interests. They're not there to sort of say, well, how can we meet in the middle?
Yeah.
So that sort of compromise is where you're sort of moving from your lawyer and their support into mediation.
That's interesting, because when I'm asked, again, just on the general inquiries or the DMs, people will say, so I'm thinking about going to mediation, or the most common situation or question would be, I've been invited to go to mediation by my ex. Should I go, or should I get some legal advice?
Yeah.
I will always say, big fan of mediation, you should definitely do it. However, because I'm worried that might be the vulnerable person I'm DMing, I don't know.
Yeah.
You should know the parameters with which the court's going to decide your case, so that you can go into mediation with a loose grounding, as to where, where the negotiation lies, but it's not a fixed, so I'm always encouraging them to come and speak to us prior to going in, because I just assume there's this person that doesn't know what's going on, and I don't want them to sell the farm after the first session of mediation.
Yeah, sure.
But then I suppose the mediator's not going to allow them to sell the farm. Do you know what I mean? You're going to be there to go, well, hang on a minute.
You're going to need
you
to
can't
get your
give it
legal
all
advice.
away. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So whether that's before or sort of during, that legal advice is there. So I think it's covered, and it's important, obviously, completely important that they know that they're, when they're signing and deciding and dividing, that they're doing something that's right for them.
Yeah. When does mediation fail?
When it's sort of in the middle of going through, or at the beginning?
Well, what would you?
Or when does it break down?
Yeah. When do you?
Yeah.
Because as a mediator, I think, God, I've got you guys through 4 sessions, and now it's all falling apart. Well, when and why does that happen?
Sometimes because someone has got involved. That can be a difficult one.
Okay.
And we say at the beginning, this is between you two. You're going to have people at the playground or in the office or somewhere tell you, I had this, or this happened to me, or don't do that, or you should do this. But remember, their stories are all different. So this is between you guys. But someone might come in sort of, like you say, 4 sessions in, and my friend had X, Y, and Z, and she thinks, or he thinks, and we say, oh, is that your lawyer? No. Okay. So things can break down there.
Yeah.
But mostly, if it gets to a point where someone just won't give, and again, they've sort of reached their limit and they're not going to give, then it will break down. But mostly you can get to a point where you say, well, you're not far off, you're not far away.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is walk away from here, really, I'm assuming, and go back to sort of
I think
the court route.
sometimes people need time, don't they? Occasionally they just need a little bit more time between the sessions to just maybe get their heads around a particular sort of bump that they've hit in the road.
Yeah.
And, it's like anything, everybody's different.
Yeah.
So they may need that extra time. And also I think sometimes when they've got young children and things, they may have, I don't know, something may have happened that has just triggered a bit of, tension between them. And again, it's just kind of that time period to smooth it over and then come back.
Yeah.
That's such a good point, because I see sometimes we work to getting a financial order, and we're sort of 2 months in and we're making great progress, and we actually haven't needed mediation because they're willing to compromise. It's all going swimmingly well. And then, boom, you get this resistance. And I often think for one of the parties, it's the dawning of, it's over. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like, hang on a minute, I know that we're getting divorced, I know that we've separated, but we still had all this work to do. And now that this work is almost over, what then? Like, that's it then. I've got no reason to talk to them anymore.
Yeah.
And that could come back to they don't have closure. But a lot of times it's the realisation of, I'm not ready for this yet. I'm not ready to get divorced.
That's really interesting.
Well,
isn't it?
we've
I mean,
had
that's
that
quite
where
often.
people have delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and said that, so I've got the paperwork, I've had everything through, I'm just having a look at it. Do we need to discuss any more about this?
Yeah.
And you say, well, we've covered that, but if you want to go back over that, we can look to, maybe we need another session. And it is almost as if it's that little,
Can't
can we
quite
just
let
talk
go.
some more?
Yeah.
Or we'll have people say, can we come back and discuss things?
Yeah.
And they almost adopt you as sort of, we'd like to come back and discuss other things. Can we do that? And you're like, sure. But, yeah.
I think sometimes as well we've had cases where they also been in business together.
Yeah.
So, you know, they've spent,
Oh, that's interesting.
you know, they've been married and been in business together, and then again, that's all getting separated. And like you say, it's just such a big difference to their lives that it's almost, I wouldn't say panic, but there is an element of, like you say,
I'm not
what's going to
ready.
happen now?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not ready, because when this is done,
Now what do we do? Yeah.
where am I? What do I do?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it can be quite a big thing, I think.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most surprising outcome that you've seen, both positive and negative?
Okay, so I guess positive. They came to mediate to try and separate everything, and ended up almost realising that if they did separate everything, it wasn't going to be where they wanted to be. And they ended up getting back together.
Oh.
They ended up staying together and moving forward and saying, we don't want to sell the house. We don't want to move apart. We're going to work on things. We're going to try and make it happen. So we were like, oh, okay. Okay, right, that's it. But yeah, it's surprising, lovely. And hopefully, I don't know if they ever did manage to stay together, but hopefully that was, worked well.
Oh, that's a nice story. So someone's listening right now at breaking point, hasn't spoken to anybody, hasn't spoken to a lawyer or anything else. What would your advice be?
I'd say speak to the lawyer. If they're at breaking point and they're really concerned and they feel that they want somebody on their side, sometimes that's the best thing for them. And then most times the lawyer will say, have you considered mediation? I think having that sort of knowledge that you're protected, if you like, when you're at breaking point and supported.
Yeah.
We often find that saying to people, we are impartial, but we do get it. We do understand what you're going through. We can see that both of you are sort of working really hard at this, struggling, finding it difficult. We're there to try and support as much as we can.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're at breaking point and it's very, very difficult, for me, I think knowing where I stood legally would be important.
Would make you feel
and
better.
Then consider your mediation.
Do you ever get, and I've come up against this a few times, I don't want to go to mediation because I have to show my hand and I'm not ready for that yet. I want to keep my cards close to my chest, and that they feel that mediation might disadvantage them somehow. Do you ever
I
get
think
that
if
resistance?
they come to the MIAM and they have their initial meeting, then they'd probably understand that that isn't necessarily how it's going to work. You know, it's not necessarily about, anybody having a better position or not. It's kind of about talking over what it is they want to achieve. Not maybe that feeling of necessarily having to show every card
Be vulnerable.
instantly and be vulnerable is not necessarily what mediation's about, really.
Yeah. And I think that's good for people to know. That's really good for people to know.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you a little bit now, because I think I've exhausted the questions. You and I met on a mediation course many years ago.
6, 7 years ago?
You aced the class. I did not continue with it at all. Wasn't for me.
I loved watching Tracy and they're saying, well, that's not right.
The lawyer and me would always come racing to the surface and I would want to give advice. But what would you say to people watching that potentially are thinking about becoming mediators?
Yeah. I think that if you are that type of person that you want to help, you're interested in supporting people, you're friendly and easygoing, and maybe you've been the person that, people say, oh, I need to run something by you. Maybe you've got that in you. Then mediation's really a nice way to support. I'm now retired, but I still consult.
Yeah.
And sort of Erin, we're looking to build. So we are looking for mediators.
Yeah.
We're looking for people that want to train, or we're looking for mediators that are already accredited.
Yeah.
And I think if that's something that you've always thought, well, actually, I think I'll be quite good at that.
Yeah.
At least try it. The FMA do courses as well as other people, but the FMA was where we met on the course.
Tell people what FMA is.
Family Mediation Association,
Yeah.
and they're a great company. I loved the course. I really enjoyed it. You get to sort of run through, everything really, every scenario, role playing. As you know, we had great fun with that.
Yeah.
But it's a nice way to learn, and it's a nice way to sort of understand it really.
Talk them through, Erin, what is the process of becoming a mediator? Debbie's mentioned the course, but what else is involved if somebody's thinking, I might give that a go, actually?
Yeah, so obviously there's the course, and then you have to obviously pass that, and then obviously...
Is it a long course? How long is it?
I think it's 10 weeks, is it?
It's a number of days through a series of weeks. So you're in the end, I think, it's about 10 days over those weeks.
Yeah.
That you're 2 days here, then another 3 days, then you're doing homework and your assessment and everything else in between. But once you've done that course, the training and support after that, you do so many training hours in a year. Yeah. You're looking at new law, really, to understand it.
And there's other courses that you can go on. Some of them are short courses, but they're just a taster of certain aspects of the law. So that you understand certain parts of it. And
is this to help you with other disciplines like employment mediation, or is this all still family mediation?
All still family mediation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but like child inclusive, and you're just looking at different areas, and just so you have an understanding of all of them.
Yeah.
And then really it's kind of then potentially sitting in with a mediator and getting some experience and
is that hard, that bit, trying to get to sit in with a mediator?
It can be, yeah.
Is it?
It can be. You can sort of find that there's certain mediators, you can go back to the FMA or the FMC and the Family Mediation Council and say, do you have mediators that are happy for me to observe? And I was really fortunate. I had a lovely lady that was an ex-magistrate that I just sat in awe of her the whole time thinking, oh, wow, she's done this and that was great. So you learn a lot. And then she'd say, you can write up my case. You can run through what happened here. And she'd have some great stories and some great sort of knowledge to share. Yeah. And she was really willing to share it. And in the end, she had sort of about 5 or 6 of us that would all be hounding her, can I sit in? Can I go? Can I go? And she was very good. She'd have us all in the background. Yeah. Turn your screens off, listen in. I've cleared it with my clients. They're happy to have you listen in. Yeah. She was invaluable. And you have... someone that's sort of almost like a mentor within the mediation that's there to support you, and you bounce ideas off them and you say, I'm either working towards an accreditation or I need some help with this case, and they're there to help. So it's a good system. It works. Yeah. But I think that sort of finding out more about it, through the FMA and looking at the course and what's involved, if you are considering it, you can email us at Montreux and just ask us a quick question. We're always happy to help. What's a good idea? Where do I start?
Is it a long process before you become accredited, before you can actually start earning? Or
No. You don't have to be accredited. They'll tell you that you can be accredited or not be accredited. Some people don't ever get accredited. Okay. They sort of look at sort of aspects of it really. Yeah. We're a private practice. Yeah. I'm obviously retired, but a private practice, and we work mostly with sort of accredited people, non-accredited people, trainees, people that are child mediators, all sorts of mediators together. So some people have been in law and worked in law and carry on in law and mediate sort of...
Yeah, quite a few of the people when I did my course, majority were solicitors. Really? We had a judge. Well, she wasn't an ex-judge, she was a judge, but she was part-time. So it was mostly a legal background, actually, people that were on the course. And then there was just a few that weren't. So
it doesn't surprise me, because going back to the queue for family court at the moment, I think there's more and more family practices looking to do mediation so that we can just move things along a little bit quicker. Yeah. Is it expensive to complete the course?
I think I think it was about 2,500 thinking back at the time. Yeah, about 2,500.
2,800, something like that. I mean, I think that, again, the courses vary depending on who you do them with.
Yeah.
But around that figure. Yeah.
I think it can really work, particularly if you are a carer, you know, if you've got children at school and you kind of need to have flexible hours potentially.
Yeah.
Because am I right in saying that you can be self-employed as a mediator or do you have to be employed?
No, you can be self-employed.
Either or,
Okay. Yeah,
So
I mean, when I left, for example, I set up a small company. At the beginning, it was me. And that sort of, you know, how can I help people? How can I work with people? And it kind of took off. It's word of mouth and people saying, well, she helped. You know, she worked with me and she sort of supported me. And then we expanded. And obviously, you know, Erin's now taken that over. And, you know, as we say, we're looking now to expand again. But
it's quite nice getting referrals from people that have come through us, and then they send family members.
Yeah,
and, you know, it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah,
we've
that word of mouth.
I think we've had one lady that's sent about 4 now.
Oh, really?
And we say we've put you on some sort of little retainer, sending people our way. So I'm always at the school gates telling people.
Well,
nice.
we only ever use Montreux Media. Well, unless obviously the clients have said, no, we've got our own mediator. Absolutely, that's entirely up to them. And I'm not saying this because you guys are here, but we get great feedback, really good feedback.
That's always great to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you get that,
But I've had a few clients come back, not just me, but the rest of the team, and of course we'll all feed back to each other, that they left feeling they were listened to, that they didn't think it was going to work, but actually they were able to get their story over or what they wanted over, that they felt heard. I think that's the biggest thing, that, you know, they go in a little bit apprehensive as to, or, you know, my ex is a bit of a bully, or my ex isn't going to agree with any of this and I don't know why I'm wasting my time. And actually they felt heard. And I think, well, if you guys can manage to do that, that can only be a good thing. You know?
I think that's what we talk about often, that people do need to be heard.
Yeah.
We often sort of say that, you know, we're receiving as opposed to transmitting
Yeah.
most of the time. We're actually here to sort of listen and find out what's going on, what your fears are, where you want to go with it. And without listening, we're not going to understand it. So that is the receiving part, I think, is the important bit.
Thanks you guys.
Thanks
so much.
Thank you for having us.